After 18 years and 4 kids and building a whole life together, she was the neighbor. A friend of mine who I haven't seen in a while came to the bar this weekend, and he told me he is going through a divorce. And I said, what happened? Did you up or did she up? I always ask this question because I feel like it's easier to take if you're not the one who made the mistake and destroyed your marriage and your whole life together. It's easier to sleep about it. But anyway, he said she up. I said, okay, do you want to talk about it? What happened? So he said one day he woke up at 3 in the morning and he found out his wife wasn't in bed. And he's like, that was weird. Why? Maybe she's in the bathroom. So he's like, I go outside to smoke a cigarette. I'll just, I'm already up. I feel like smoking. So he's out there smoking a cigarette. And he said, I hear the back gate of their backyard jingling like someone's trying to come in. So I go to my house, I get my gun, and I just wait there in the dark, seeing who the coming through at my gate at 3 in the morning. And he said, to his surprise and devastation, it was his wife coming back in through the back gate in her robe, trying to sneak in, do the ninja walk. And he said she walked up to him and she was shocked. Her eyes just popped open like a deer in the headlights. And she said, why are you up at 3 in the morning outside here? And he said, why the are you sneaking back into our house at 3 in the morning in your robe? He asked her some questions, and she ended up, through persuasion, telling him everything and how she's been this dude for 6 months. So 18 years, 4 kids. Obviously their marriage was over. They met at work, of all places, of course, like always. So in his rage, he goes to kick the neighbor's door down, takes his gun, was going to kill him. A bunch of cops come, arrest him, which kind of is understandable after being married to someone for that long, building a whole life, having a family, and just having them throw everything away over some is crazy to me. So the frustration is understandable. In any case, he said a couple of days later, after he calmed down and got out of jail, he told her that he's going to go with his cousin for a couple of days and she can come and take her stuff because, again, their marriage is done and over with at this point. She came in and took everything out of the house. Everything, including all the silverware. He said he came back to a house that's completely emptied. And I say this to guys all the time. And I don't know if it's the same on the woman's side. I can only speak from a man's perspective. But I always say, you don't know your wife until you're going through a divorce. Or you don't know your long-term girlfriend until you break up with her and she can no longer get her way or have any use for you or anything like that. That's when you're going to find out who they actually are as a human being. But in any case, she cleaned out everything. She wants the house that he paid for with his money. She wants child support for 4 kids, and she wants spousal support payments, even though she's the one that was the neighbor, and that's why their marriage is over now. It's just interesting. I guess I'm telling you this story to say that I will never in my life trust anyone.
This is a story that unfortunately is all too common in our practice. And the first thing I always tell men is, doesn't matter if she's cheating or not. Doesn't matter who made the mistakes. Like this gentleman here, I'll go ahead and assume he's in California. He's wearing a Lakers hat. But it doesn't matter what she did to you at all in the divorce. But it sounds like he made a critical mistake. If you show up at the neighbor's house with a gun and get arrested, California, probably a couple different crimes that have been committed if you show up at the neighbor's house with a gun, and now you're dealing with DV issues.
And let me just remind you, they say heat of passion is a defense. It's an impartial defense. So even if you had the worst thing happening to you in the world and you're under the heat of that passion and you go and you commit a murder or an attempted murder, the crime isn't as high, but you're going to jail, and it's a long time. It's an imperfect defense. Just because someone did something awful to you doesn't mean you have a right to take matters into your own hands and commit violence or the threat of violence, number one. And yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Tough break. It sucks. Mark, even if you have a prenuptial agreement that said, hey, if this spouse cheats, they don't get anything, that's invalid in California against public policy. So even with a prenup, that wouldn't be a reason for invalidated community share. Realistically, the only time that you can cut off spousal support or rights to a pension is the conviction of domestic violence.
Let's walk through piece by piece of this divorce. Yeah. We said the number one thing, first thing we tell any client is that the cheating doesn't matter. Unfortunately, it's a regular basis. We come in where they were caught cheating, they were caught doing something shady, whatever it may be, doesn't matter. So we start off this divorce, even playing field, irrelevant, and then you go to the neighbor's house with your gun. Your soon-to-be ex-wife is probably going to accuse you of having threatened her with the gun. Mm-hmm. So you're probably going to have to deal with DV accusations when it comes to that. Then you're going to be dealing with the criminal stuff with your neighbor, which is going to prevent some of your defenses if you have a family law domestic violence restraining order.
Absolutely. You're going to have to take the fifth, right?
Yeah.
Until your criminal case is done, which means that domestic violence restraining order that probably kicked you out of your house, probably keeps you from seeing your children or only seeing them on a monitored level. But, I mean, a criminal threat with a gun, you might not even get to see your children.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Then the next piece talks about he went and stayed with his cousin and told his wife to take whatever she wanted and she was going to need to leave. Well, it sounds like she took everything, including the kids. Fortunately, in this case, in California, they were married for 18 years. Most of that, if not everything, is going to be community property, so essentially half yours, half hers. So she's going to, as you go through the property distribution process, she's going to owe you money for that.
It is. Now, also remember, though, even then you might not get a fair shake because she's going to get that stuff at garage sale value unless it's, unique or something else. He's going to have to go out and buy all new things. Now, you could make a motion that I want a return of half of that specific property. I haven't seen a lot of people do that, but there could be an appropriate case. But otherwise, he's going to have to go buy everything new. And if he wants to have the kids over, he's going to have to buy everything new. Yeah. It's unfair.
Big mistake. I mean, realistically, in a situation like that, if you're allowed to go back to the house, because it sounds like he would have been allowed to go back to the house, you shouldn't just give your spouse free reign, because I would agree with you. You're never going to get a fair shake because you're going to say, hey, there was this, there was that, and she's going to raise her hands and say, I don't know what you're talking about. I was in court just last week, and there's a dispute over a man's documents. So he left the house, his birth certificate, his social security card, all of these car titles of vehicles that he had gotten in the divorce magically disappeared. So now he's going to have to go through all of these issues and incur all these expenses because he just left and walked away. And now it becomes a he said, she said. And despite the fact judges should be dealing with this stuff, the judge doesn't want to deal with it. The judge told him, all right, so it sounds like you're going to have to go get all this stuff fixed. I'll give you the ability to come back and talk about the cost it took. But it's going to be his time, and you're going to go back in and get a couple $100 to get everything fixed. So, I mean, that was a mistake there. But, I mean, she didn't do anything illegal in taking all the stuff. She definitely didn't do anything illegal in taking the kids with her.
No, I mean, let's go to the documents first. You have an equal access and right to all your community property, so she can take it. This is where we get to planning and thoughtfulness, right? What if he had tracing documents? What if he had bank records and title documents and other things that showed he had a down payment 20 years ago? Yeah. That's gone. That's gone, and that bank is not going to have him after 8 years. This is where we have to be smart when we're doing these things. First of all, he should have remained there at the home. They should have called the police to have an effective, transfer. But secondarily, get the whole control of your documents, right? Before all of this goes down, you have to be smart about this, right? Our first reaction is to go to the emotional one. And this is where he's already lost from the get-go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you look at this piece, and now it's like you've been in jail for a domestic disturbance, essentially. The house is empty. You talked about another pieces, talked about the down payment. They've been married for 18 years. In the state of California, once someone's been married for 10, 12, payment, usually that becomes a very contested issue that ends up at trial if the other side disagrees. But after 18 years, like, she's asking for the house. Well, she can ask for whatever she wants. California community property in general, it's going to start out as a default, half hers, half yours. So she can take the house, but she's going to have to pay you for it. She can take the furniture. She's going to have to pay you for it. You can take the car, but you're going to have to pay her for it.
Just a balance sheet. That's what's sad.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we know that it's this emotional bond and, hey, we were partners. But it's just a balance sheet at the end of the day. Yeah. We can break down the marriage. And whether that's right or wrong, that's what it is in the state of California.
Yeah.
The kids are something different. Spousal support's something different. Gosh, spousal support, that's got to be the one that sticks with people.
That's got to be a tough one. And I just had a conversation with one of our attorneys the other day about, like, that one of the bigger things with especially higher earning men, it's like you don't want to get stuck paying $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 of her attorney fees and then be on the hook 18 years, long-term marriage. Essentially, that spousal support order is going to be indefinite. And cheating is not how you can't get out of spousal support because of cheating. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a math equation as well, too. There's a test laid out that determines, some counties actually use the DISOMaster, but there's a test laid out that says how much spousal support should be paid.
Right, and then child support, there's even less wiggle room, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter that you have, well, I can't pay that. I've got an $800 car payment. Well, it looks like you're going to be driving a Prius, buddy, right? Like, it seems unfair, but especially child support is just a calculation. Spousal support, there's at least a wiggle room in, did that spouse contribute to your current financial position, these other things. But again, as the passage of time goes along, those things...
There is some discretion in spousal support. I think you could win some empathy points.
Yes.
You may have lost all of those empathy points by pulling a gun on the neighbor, but... Yeah, that's a tough one. And unfortunately, well, actually, we're seeing more and more women are the higher earners, and they go in asking for spousal support, and it's like, well, that's not man paying the woman thing. That's higher earning spouse paying the outspouse.
Yeah, and it is fun when that gender role is reversed because it's like hell hath no fury like a woman forced to pay spousal support. Sorry to generalize, but if I see the most angry people I've seen in my time are women paying men spousal support. What kind of man would take that money, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of things. Remember that. Don't fall into those gender traps if your roles are reversed.
You're seeing it more and more.
Yeah.
I mean, I had one a couple years ago where it was that the husband had worked a super blue-collar job and made just enough money for the family to survive, where the woman went and got her MBA, and it'd been 4 or 5 years since she had gotten out of school, but she had just started making good money. So we went in, and she was extremely angry because we were able to get some of that college expense reimbursed back to the community because they had not seen the benefit from that degree fully yet. And then she was making a little more than 2 times what he was, but he dropped the kids off at school every day. He picked the kids up from school every day. He was the one who took the kids to most of their activities. And similar to this situation, this woman had a lover, had been caught cheating, and then all of this stuff. And she blamed it all on the fact that she was caught cheating, but that was irrelevant in the situation.
100%. I mean, this really is gender neutral. The fact that men get stuck with it more often than women traditionally is true, but there is no reason that you are not afforded equal rights as a man to these financial aspects.
The one thing we do see is, though, men are typically more forgiving. Men are significantly more likely. I can probably count on my hands the number of times that I've seen a woman just outright decline like child support and spousal support that were definitively and definitely entitled to. But I can't say the same for women. It's almost the expectation. But yeah, you get that. You made the comment about like, what kind of man are you? You hear those types of comments all the time. And it was like, well, it was the type of man that took care of your kids. It was the type of man who made sure everything in the house was right. It was the type of man, like in the situation I described, that sacrificed for your family to put your family in a better position.
Which is actually a factor on the spousal support.
Yeah.
Right?
100%. So, interesting piece. I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's you can't have that emotional outburst. That is something that is so common. Maybe not as extreme as pulling a gun on the neighbor, but the emotional outburst is usually what gets guys in trouble off the bat. And then you saw some assumptions by both the man and the wife in this scenario that are kind of fall in line with the gender norms that just simply aren't true.
100%. 100%. And it again, when we say it doesn't matter, yes, it matters to you. And yes, it sucks for you. And we feel for you. But when it comes down to the brass tacks, it's irrelevant, regardless of how harsh that might be, because we are a no-fault divorce state. It's a rule of convenience to push cases through. Other states are different, but California is not. It's no-fault divorce state.
Definitely.